Welcome to Legislative Year in Review. I'm Angela Nolasco. The 2025 legislative session, which started January 13th, came to a final close on Sunday, April 27th. The 105-day session saw a lot of contentious policies that sparked heated debates between state Democrats and Republicans, from issues like parents' rights to limiting rent increases to increasing the cost of gas per gallon. Perhaps among the most controversial, a tax package proposed by Democratic legislators to help narrow the state's budget deficit, estimated between $12 and $16 billion.
In gross substitute Senate Bill 5167, the Secretary will read.
The proposed tax package plays a vital role in this year's operating budget, one that was a partisan issue in spades.
This was a year that demanded very difficult and painful choices.
This budget assumes an 8% increase in reckless spending.
On sine die, the last day of session, lawmakers from both chambers gathered on the floor to debate the Democrat-proposed operating budget concerning the state's daily expenses and investments for the next 2 years.
Evening, everyone. I'm Lori Jenkins, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Recognizing the gaping hole in the state budget, plus inflation-driven cost increases, majority Democrats had come up with a $78 billion budget composed of cuts and both new and increased taxes, funding new investments, including education, public safety, and social services. The budget sets aside $750 million for special education services, $200 million for low-income school districts, and $213 million for school materials, supplies, and operations. To hire new law enforcement staff, the budget allocates $100 million in grant funding, as requested by Governor Bob Ferguson. It also anticipates $8.7 billion in taxes without dipping into the state's rainy day fund or carrying out any furloughs. There's about $3.1 billion in budget cuts to safeguard any shortfall, which is set to grow to $7 billion over 4 years. The budget proposes several ways to beef up funding, spread across various cuts, like ECAP, which lowers the cost for childcare for eligible Washingtonians, and tax increases, namely a business and occupation tax increase, a tax expansion on synthetic nicotine, and a hike on the capital gains tax rate, among others. We'll take a more comprehensive look at these proposed taxes under the Democratic tax package in our year-in review look back.
Now the question before the House is final passage of engrossed substitute Senate Bill 5167 as recommended by the Conference Committee.
But for now, back to the operating budget floor debates, where Democratic budget writers expressed their support. On the House floor, Democratic Representative Tim Ormsby urged a yes vote on the proposed budget.
We focused on the people that need the state's programs and services, and the folks that provided those programs and services throughout the entirety of state government. We started with a process that focused on food, shelter, and health, and the supports that provide food, shelter, and health. This budget protects those crucial programs for Washington families while also addressing the significant needs in our public schools, particularly in special education. We were able to do all this by taking a balanced approach. We avoided an all-cuts budget that would have been devastating to Washingtonians and their families, to workers, and to the communities that need it the most.
Echoing his support in the Senate, Democratic Senator and Chair of the Ways and Means Committee, June Robinson.
An all-cuts budget would have been irresponsible, I believe. It would have caused deeper, longer-lasting harm for our communities and the people that we represent here. That's why we paired reductions, and there are a lot of reductions in this budget, with new revenue streams, so we could protect the essential services that people depend on and work towards a solid future. This budget, Mr. President, is not perfect. No budget ever is. But it is responsible, it is thoughtful, and it puts people first.
Republicans, however, disagreed, criticizing the budget's reliance on cuts and taxes as, quote, regressive, including some new fees and fee increases on licenses. Here's Republican Senator Nikki Torres.
$9.6 billion in tax increases just for the state. $12.9 billion for state and local over the 4 years. In this current budget, the fee increases that we will be seeing that is going to hurt everyone includes childcare copays being doubled. Nursing homes will also feel it. They're going to feel a tripling of the licensing fee per bed. Hunting and fishing licenses are going to go up 38%. We didn't put that in our Save Washington budget. Discover passes are going to increase 50%, taking it to $45. Increases to restaurants as well, with the liquor and license fees.
Sharing Torres's views from the other chamber, Republican Representative Travis Couture strongly opposed the budget, criticizing Democrats' spending habits.
We now will have a $78 billion budget that assumes the largest tax increases in state history. Taxes on the working class and the blue-collar folks spread across almost everywhere. The budget negligence of the past, where we once had a $15 billion surplus, but now face a $15 billion deficit, will be solved and balanced on the backs of hardworking Washingtonians. We did that by making cuts on some of our most vulnerable people, which the tax increases assumed in this budget were to help make sure that they didn't fall through the cracks. Mr. Speaker, we pushed them through the cracks.
The Speaker's about to start the roll call machine. The Speaker has started the roll call machine.
The budget cleared both chambers in their final vote, 52-45 in the House and 28-19 in the Senate.
Having received a constitutional majority in gross substitute Senate Bill 5167 as recommended by the Conference Committee is declared passed.
Having received a constitutional majority in gross substitute Senate Bill 5167 as recommended by the Conference Committee is declared passed. The title of the bill will be the title of the act.
It awaits the signature of Governor Bob Ferguson, who earlier this month expressed his dissatisfaction with the previous draft, saying that the final budget should conserve the rainy day fund, one that's based on, quote, realistic revenue projections, that minimizes new investments and shows Washingtonians billions in savings from slashing inefficiencies. And, lastly, it has to be independent of revenue sources that could eventually be challenged in court, like the wealth tax.
I will not sign that. The legal arguments for a wealth tax are untested. The courts could go either way on that issue. It would be irresponsible to rely on an untested new tax to balance our budget, particularly given the situation we face with the federal government.
In a sine die interview on TVW's The Impact, Governor Bob Ferguson signaled support for parts of the operating budget, specifically those prioritizing public schools and preserving the state's rainy day fund and its $100 million grant for law enforcement staffing.
I appreciate the legislature hearing that and adopting a budget that does not rely on a wealth tax.
Like all other bills that pass the legislature, the budget bills and the tax bills to fund the budget must win the governor's signature to become law. As session ended, Ferguson released a lengthy statement in which he thanked legislators for their efforts and outlined his budget principles and priorities. The governor stated, quote, I look forward to carefully reviewing the budget line by line over the next few weeks. When that review is complete, I will share my thoughts with the public in greater detail. And, quote, I appreciate that the legislature heard my concerns and dramatically reduced the revenues assumed in the final budget. That said, I intend to carefully review all revenue increases, end quote. The governor's final decisions on the budget and taxes are expected in the coming days.
That does it for this episode of Legislative Year in Review. We'd like to thank you for joining us nightly during the 2025 legislative session. Stay tuned for upcoming lookbacks, including the 2 other budgets and the Democrat proposed tax package in our next episode. We'll see you then.